In this video, I'm going to discuss the subject of OptimismMaxxing and explore why some guys who would appear to have Mogger lives end up admitting to having issues with their mental health. After posting my recent videos, some people have commented to say I'm their favorite Blackpill content creator, which I appreciate, although I have made a conscious effort not to use the term Blackpill in my videos and instead refer to this community as the PSL sphere, because the concept of the black pill never fully resonated with me. Many people who speak about the black pill use the connotations that it is the unfair reality of life, which is so brutal that most people refuse to accept it, implying that being a black piller means you have recognized some secret knowledge that normies can't recognize. I recognized the importance of looks when it came to how people perceive the behavior of others from an early age, so the idea that the black pill was something that you one day discover online when you're approaching adulthood seemed alien to me. I have witnessed many instances in real life that go against the black pill, so I was someone who actually wanted the black pill theory to play out in real life more than it actually does, because I had a high ceiling for looks maxing, which meant I would be a beneficiary of the black pill post-looks maxing if it was as undeniable as many people claim. I was in the PSL sphere shortly after Face and LMS videos first went live, as well as when Eggman's black pill video went live, and I never seen any of the info they spouted as being particularly brutal, because I want women to practice eugenics and improve the quality of the genetics of the next generation, and I also believed I would have a good TLV when I filled out my frame and improved my looks with surgeries. I want women to practice eugenics because I disliked having to interact with subhumans who I grew up around. But when I've been in environments with higher pedigree, higher sentience people, they were far more pleasant. I just can't promote the use of the term black pill, since it implies that the information associated with it is unjust. However, I consider it the most just outcome possible when superior genes receive a preference to be spread over inferior genes, since it is what nature wants. What I see as being brutal and unjust is when men with inferior genes get to reproduce and create unattractive, low-sentient offspring. So if anything deserved to be labeled as the black pill, it's when people manage to cheat their genetics as it goes against nature. I would like to see a shift in the community and a more optimistic approach, whereby an edit of Moggers with great genes is referred to as a white pill edit, rather than a black pill edit, because the celebration of good genes should be a good thing. You could say that it's cut to glaze the men who could pump and dump your future wife, and while men as a whole lose out in a system where females are having sex with a minority of top Moggers. Having casual hookups where the girl doesn't get impregnated by the man with good genes is just a pointless endeavor from an evolutionary standpoint, particularly if the woman goes on to produce below-average-looking children with a below-average-looking man. Later in the video, I will show examples of rugby jocks and high-status guys who could be slaying a different girl every night of the week, but still ended up depressed because they weren't cut out for having casual sex with many different partners that leads them no closer to a relationship or children. I feel as though there's a large section of men who resonated with the Looks Purgatory video because they feel like they are underperforming with women relative to their looks level in comparison to the results of men who look worse than them. I truly believe that a supposed incel revolution will not come from below-average-looking guys or subhuman guys who can't get laid. Rather, I think if it was to happen, it would come from above-average-looking guys who can't get laid, typically as a result of social isolation or having a non-normie brain. Even the above-average-looking guys who are getting a few dissatisfying slays per year with girls beneath their looks level, while they never move any closer towards finding a relationship, these men will be the soldiers in the supposed incel revolution. These men feel they did everything right by looks maxing and money maxing, beyond the average paycheck to paycheck normie, yet they don't have any girl waiting for them which they expected they would. I say that these will be the soldiers, in the sense that their voices will get louder and louder as a result of discontent. And once they realize just how many men like them that there are out there, they will eventually have to share ideas online and strategize about how they can get their share of the pie, which they feel they deserve, and that those beneath them don't. It seems that being inclined towards trying to ascend and better yourself is often associated with having a non-normie brain and is maladaptive for securing a mate in our current society. We need to form an alliance for above-average-looking men with high ambition and conqueror mindsets who have found their archetype to be maladaptive for securing a worthy mate. I've been in the PSL community for a decade, and I could never imagine years ago that the lingo used on the forums would make it into the mainstream consciousness thanks to all of the people creating PSL videos that would be exposed to normies on TikTok. I believe this is a reason for optimism, because what started as an underground movement only sought out by highly sentient men gave birth to a new cultural trend adopted by the masses, and we still hold the power to influence the direction that the culture goes in simply by making videos and spreading ideas. I had been telling myself since 2017 that I would make PSL-related videos because there were only a handful of YouTube channels at the time talking about PSL topics and analyzing what makes certain facial features attractive, including the angel versus witch skull video and warrior versus wimp skull video. It was only when we got to 2024 and I seen that the term PSL God was being used often in YouTube videos that I realized I would have to put my stake in the scene and share my ideas before the scene got too saturated and the opportunity to grow a channel might pass. It's possible that the quality of PSL content will become diluted as more normies who jumped on the bandwagon from TikTok start making videos to gain personal clout rather than to seek the truth, which was the motivating factor that drew people towards the PUA hate forum, but a coordinated effort from content creators to push certain propaganda can help us to influence normies in a way that benefits us. Even though looks are the main focus of PSL videos, since it highlights the truth that your appearance defines your life, the shelf life for these kinds of videos isn't going to last forever, because most footage used is from guys who were in their prime 10+ years ago, and there aren't enough new moggers dropping to provide new mogging clips. It's arguable that we have reached the point of the beautiful ones in rat utopia, and further enhancement of the looks of the male population is barely going to benefit males in the dating market because of the state of modern social dynamics and the lack of utility men have in the eyes of women in modern society. I think we can use the attention we gain on edits of moggers from a normie audience to introduce this normie audience to other pills to undo the brainwashing that has been subverting whites for generations. Explaining the science behind beautiful faces inevitably leads to the highlighting of European phenotypes over other races, which serves to remind people that some K-pop cells that the media are trying desperately to push have fabricated appeal rather than true primal appeal like an unknown beautiful person has. White Soldier 7 is an account on TikTok that's doing great work on setting the record straight. The looks-related edits showing the power of beauty was the first step in getting the normies' attention, and the second step is undoing the subversion of whites by educating them on the race pill, and how racial appearance is the primary indicator of certain thinking and behavioral patterns. If normies accept that your looks indicate your level of functionality as a human, it shouldn't be a quantum leap for them to accept that looks are downstream from and dependent on your race, which is the first principle that determines your looks and level of functionality as a human. This lays the foundation for spreading ideas about working towards restoring white communities, and I will go in depth into the race pill in a future video. In reference to my age pill video, I wasn't trying to hate on pretty boys or people who had a peak experience in high school. I was simply focusing on the silver linings that could be taken for those who didn't experience everything they wanted in high school, and giving them an idea of a life roadmap they could be optimistic about. If you didn't get the full extent of the formative experiences you wanted when younger, it can create a determination to succeed that will take you further in life than those who felt content by their formative experiences but end up single at 25 after a breakup and have no idea where to go next in life, because they never had to develop any skills to receive the things that just came to them by chance when they were younger. This is why I say guys who are fortunate in their teen years cannot fully appreciate those experiences until they start to become old sell, because it was all they knew at the time. It's like how a rich kid growing up rich isn't going to appreciate his luxuries, the same way that someone who grew up poor and attained those luxuries for themselves will appreciate them. Now let's move on to the examples of sports players and status maxers who had perceived mogger lives talking about being depressed. What people forget about athlete life in team sport environments is that it's part of your job description to follow orders and a lot of your circumstances are out of your control, with most athletes falling short of the goals they set. Being a sports player who dominates at each step of the ranks is all they know, so once they face setbacks or are forced to retire, they go from experiencing peak highs and only knowing one way of life to realizing they can never experience those peaks again and have no idea how to adapt to normie life once their perceived value evaporates. Some might try to claim I'm coping by pointing out the crash that comes after a peak, but I believe one way of being more grateful for your own life is to understand that the grass is not always greener on the other side.
And I was playing football on a field, and we had an all-girls school right next door to us. So I'm just playing football like it's a normal day. I'm 14 years old. The whole school from the other school is on the fence.
You're joking.
And I'm like banned from that field for life.
At first, how does it feel?
It was wild, but what their people
Good
don't...
wild?
Yeah, it was amazing.
I can
was
imagine.
like,
Is there a moment where you look back and say that was the lowest moment for me? That was the pivotal moment.
I had a few of them. I was worried how far my rock bottom was going to be. Where's rock bottom for me? And you would never have seen it. I'm very good at hiding it. No one would have ever have seen it. But rock bottom, I mean, I don't even know if I hit it yet. I can either make that choice now and pick my last moment as my rock at the bottom, or I can make a new one and make a whole new low. That's my choice. You know, if I hadn't had the help I had, I don't know where the hell I'd be right now.
The bad thing about that is that, like, you know, I knew the Brezzies when I was in college, like, and guys looking at guys like you from the outside, you think this guy's in on a rugby scholarship, he's jock, he's the in crowd, he plays for Ireland, good-looking big guy and all that, and you kind of assume that these guys they're all right, like.
You see, that perception has to stop, and it has to stop now because it just doesn't work that way.
From the outside looking in, it would seem Dan Conn is the Aussie bloke who has it all. Good looks, professional sporting career and successful business ventures.
I went through those suicidal episodes, tried to overdose, and I just veered into a big best of luck. Told everyone it was an accident, you know, I didn't mean to do it. I saw something and I swerved, and so it took me a while to come out and actually say, you know, it was actually me trying to finish it off.
Sad news, of course, coming out of Australian rugby, the sad passing of Dan Vickerman, only 37 years old. 30. He talked about with his friends, JK, that difficulty of transitioning out of a professional environment into the next phase of his life. And this is very much a real thing for athletes, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's going to affect all of us at some stage, someone we know or ourselves. Obviously, it happened to me. You know, with Dan, it's just so sad, a wife and two young kids, and like 70% of ex-professional sports people are depressed, divorced and broke 5 years after they stopped playing.
Just like to announce that I'm retiring from the game.
After playing 63 tests for Australia, Dan Vickerman retired from rugby in 2012.
He was almost like the model for how to transition out of sport. He went to Cambridge, got a degree, he was always super proactive about establishing himself post-rugby.
But since his death, friends have spoken publicly about the challenges Vickerman faced in retirement. It's a story close to home for former teammate Clyde Rathbone.
I remember being invited into the coach's office when I was 27 and him telling me there was no contract on the table for next year. And that was not at all how I envisaged my career ending up. So I left with a lot of disappointment and regret, and not really sure how to reframe who I was. Just sunk progressively into a more severe depression over time. It was like having a grand piano on your chest. And it's not a feeling of sadness or disappointment or despair so much as a numbness. I remember just thinking about one day driving off a bridge. I could no longer pretend that something wasn't severely wrong here.
You've been really honest about speaking with your issues with depression and more generally mental health. Can I ask how dark those days got for you?
There'd be days where I basically wouldn't leave the house. I wouldn't talk to my partner. And
is it true that your partner had to wake up some mornings and just double check that you were breathing?
I was using painkillers and things like that to sort of suppress. My body was injured, so I was just using them for that. But then, because it was such a hole I was in, you know, I started abusing them. I suffer from anxiety as well, so I was having a fair few anxiety attacks and panic attacks and things like that, and it was sort of hard to cope with, so then I'd try and numb it, and it was just a vicious cycle that I ended up in a pretty dark hole.
There was one I read about buying a gun. Can you tell us, is that, you know, where was your mindset at that time?
Yeah, I was in a pretty dark place, but yeah, I went to some extreme lengths, and I felt that the pain I just didn't see a way out. But there is a huge way out for everyone, and
like there was so many things I was doing off the field that no one knew, because you don't know, like no one knew my personal. Like, they just watch the game and they're like, oh, this guy's the footy player, you know, he's killing it on the field, and they'd see the 80 minutes. But what was happening behind the scenes, bro? I was like going on a down spiral. Like it was just getting into this, getting into alcohol, into the women, into the drug, everything, bro, everything you think of. And you know what that environment's like, you know. And I hit a dead end. Like I was just so lost and empty, bro. And
although my self-esteem issues always, at the back of my mind saying you shouldn't write a book, you don't deserve to write a book, who's going to read your book?
I know you a little bit, obviously, I know your kind of persona, to actually put those stories down, because as you said, the self-esteem stuff's a big one for you. When you look at someone like yourself and you look at your career, right, and all the things you've done, got all that going on, how hard was it for you to really actually sit down and start talking yourself up and go, look, I've done this. Was it a bigger battle as I imagine?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, bro. But in that headspace, when you're struggling with the mental things that I was struggling with at that time, you don't really think about anything else, because it's all about you, And through that whole process, that whole journey, I learned that instead of chasing those manufactured highs that I got from drugs and alcohol and womanizing, I started getting them from making better decisions, being a better person, being a better human, And
at 18, I had it all. Won a NRL ring, was one of the best players in the world, had a 6-figure salary, nice car, living in a nice house now, attention of the opposite sex. Bro, as a youngster, that's what we're taught that's what success is.
Success, yeah.
But I was deeply, deeply unhappy. I need to train every day, bro, because there's a bit of self-hate that goes on in my mind. I need to drown that down. And that's my sensitivity. That's my own personal thing that I got to go through, and that's every day. That's why I got to train.
When did you start noticing you had depression or you were suffering with mental health?
It wasn't until I finished,
Oh, true.
Just going, well, that's when I really noticed, because I just wasn't motivated, and I didn't want to get out of bed, and I was wondering why I just wasn't feeling happy.
Yeah.
Because on the outside looking in, I had everything I could ever dream of, but on the inside, I couldn't find that one thing that could make me happy. Getting up and seeing my kids wasn't making me happy, and for me, rugby was my everything, and that's all I knew, and that's all I thought I was, and it was. And when you finish, that's all taken away, and you're like, okay, well, what now? What do I do now? I still had so much self-doubt in myself, like the most fluent accent, or I don't have the biggest vocabulary there to get me through, and I felt like I was getting judged for that.
Yeah.
The way I was calling games, I'm getting judged now. I'm hosting a radio show, and if things don't come out the right way, you've been seen as like you're dumb, and you don't even know how to speak. So there's still a little bit of that anxiety that goes through me on a daily.
I was taking everything from prescription meds to drugs to alcohol, and like trying to get on something every day pretty much when I was in France. So like it was a good win away, so we just got into it, and I ended up having a seizure on the bus. And it was hectic. That was sort of like the first wake up call where I was like, okay, like I need to rein it in a bit. It was just a bit at that stage. I was like, I just need to rein it in a bit. And then it happened one more time. And then I was like, okay, fuck, all right.
Happened again.
And I think there was a lot of things running through my head that sort of showed up in Argentina. And Argentina wasn't the place where I needed or was able to sort those things out. And
it was quite a setback. But if you speak to any sporting or any rugby player, that's part of the journey. And nobody knows what happens behind the scenes, and the depression and the mental challenges you go through.
But even then, even at the top of his career, he was struggling with depression. You were going through basic health, and you were thinking about ending it.
Yeah.
What was happening in that time?
For me, like I was so down on myself. I didn't have any self-love, and quite honestly, I just didn't want to be alive.
I think that there will be a shift in the PSL sphere where, rather than talking about the black pill all the time, focus will shift more towards white pills, both in terms of general optimism and providing moral boosts to the white race. I believe that high-sentience white high-tier normies shouldn't have to suffer in a world where they mog such a large portion of the population, and everyone who meets this description within the PSL sphere should be forming alliances to promote each other by shilling each other's channels, and even including each other in montages of moggers. If high-tier normies can't escape looks purgatory through looks maxing, then it must be done with coordinated plans to boost each other's status. We're breaking out of looks purgatory with this one, Boyos.
Don't forget my love.